What's going on, everybody? I'm Scott Oots. Today we're going to talk about the coronavirus, something that people are just talking about over and over again, the thing that is just consuming our lives over the last few months. I want to talk about how my business has survived this and what I've learned during this time that helped me get through this and will help me if anything like this ever happens again. So when this virus came, right, it hit all of us so suddenly, just a ton of bricks hit us, everything changed overnight. Now, for business owners, a lot of them didn't have savings, right? They spent everything they made. They didn't set any money aside for a rainy day. They're out driving their Lambos. They're out doing all this kind of stuff, spending every dollar. Luckily, that's not something I did. My employees in my office are very important to me. They're like family. So for me, I wanted to make sure I had money set aside in case anything ever did happen, right? Every month of our business is a six-figure month. We every month hit six figures in wholesale fees, and we have a great time doing it. Now, when Corona hit, we just came off our biggest quarter we've ever had in the history of this company. We blew out our quarter one goal in a few weeks. I mean, we came out of the gate just going for it. And Q1 was absolutely amazing. Well, Q1 also allowed us to put a lot of money aside. And then as Q2 hit and this coronavirus really came about, we realized our pipeline was full. I mean, we had over almost $600,000 in our pipeline that was closing in the next, I think it was 75 to 90 days. That's fantastic. We're on a high. We're coming off this going, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Then all of a sudden we come screeching to a halt. And when this happened, immediately I started looking through the pipeline. I knew that we're gonna have an issue with buyers, right? We're gonna have an issue that's gonna come up. Sellers aren't gonna wanna move because they're supposed to stay in their homes. They're quarantined. Buyers are going to be worried about selling houses and houses they already have on their books that they need to get off their books. Everyone's screaming, is this 2008? Are we going to crash again, right? So everything came to a halt so quickly. So immediately, half my team was at home. There was 3 of us here in the office, and we built a war room sheet. And that war room sheet had every property on it, the spread we were supposed to make, who the buyer is. We had a green, yellow, and red marking on each one of them. Is this good to go? Is there any type of issue that might stop this? Or red, oh gosh, this is gonna fall off the board. So we went through the sheet every single morning when we were in the office, and we started tackling each of these properties one by one. We actually had, out of that, we'll call it $600,000 in our pipeline. At one point, we had over $300,000 of that under the red category. It probably wasn't going to happen. And buyers' attitude shifted. They said, you know what? I can't perform on this. My lender's pulling lending. The market's going to drop. I'm not going to be able to sell these houses. Nobody can come look at them. And all of a sudden, we just see that number dropping every day. There was one day alone that we had about $200,000 potentially fall out. Now, keep in mind, we're still bringing in contracts. My team was signing up contracts virtually, just not going to the houses. We shifted that very quickly. But for every contract we brought in, we felt like 2 were falling out. And during that time, we realized that we can't just give up, right? I mean, we had a company we had to run. We had employees that needed to be paid. There was no help at that point. The Paycheck Protection Program wasn't really out yet. EIDL loans weren't really started yet. It was just the beginning of all this. And we learned that we got to just take a second, take a breath, look at everything, really step back and say, okay, one property at a time. What can we do with this property? All right, seller's ready to go. They're still on track. Our spread's $50,000. And our buyer on this one's saying he can't get lending. His lender's pulling lending. Okay, let's look at that one. Let's step back. I have never called so many lenders in my life. We started calling lenders. Hey, will you fund on this deal? Hey man, will you fund? What's your rate? How much are you gonna charge in points? What are all your junk fees? And we're interviewing lenders to pass these off to buyers. And as we started putting in that effort, we started realizing that some of these buyers were okay with us helping them with this. And we started seeing a few deals come back on the board. But then a few more fell off, right? So we were dealing with this the entire time of coronavirus, but my company stayed 6-figure months every month within the coronavirus. So that, to me, I was so impressed with coming out of it. Well, when I say coming out of it, when we started coming out of it the first time. Now, there's probably going to be some type of second wave as they talk about, which now we're even more prepared for this. But these changes, so a lot of investors that lived through the 2008 time. Now, I wasn't one of them, right? I knew about 2008, but I wasn't a real estate investor back then. Luckily, I'm in a mastermind with some really high-end people, and I want to say old people, but they're not. They lived through 2008. Some of these guys lost everything, right? Overnight, they lost everything. They had 20 rehabs going, and then all of a sudden, stuff started tanking. And one of these guys, he was on the verge of bankruptcy, good friend of mine, and he recovered. And when this thing first started happening, he's the first person I called. I said, hey man, what is going on? Do you see this being 2008? Because I've got a pipeline full and I need to bring in this money. I worked my ass off for this money. My whole team did, and we're not gonna lose this, right? And immediately he said, no, I don't see the signs of 2008. I see everything kind of stalling up for a minute and then probably picking back up. And then about 2 weeks later, I talked to the guy again. He's like, oh my God, this is gonna be 2008. We're gonna go down. And I'm like, it's just amazing how things shift week by week. And within my business, it was the same. We were literally dealing with a different problem every single day. A lot of times, if you've heard me speak at an event, I also refer to real estate wholesaling as the game whack-a-mole, right? So back when I was younger, you go to the arcade, they got the little mole that pops up, you whack it down, it pops up somewhere else, and you just keep going. That's basically how problems work in real estate wholesaling. You take care of one, another one pops up. But I felt like during the coronavirus, we were knocking one down, and every one of them were just popping up. And we're like, well, wait a second, that's not how it's supposed to work. But we really spent time looking at every situation and every possible solution. Can the seller maybe seller finance the house to us? What are some of the ways we can get creative? Can we get the seller to seller finance this for my buyer so I can still make my wholesale fee? What are some of the things that we can do? On some of these properties, we had to get really creative. There was no other way around it. My wholesale fee, I had to put it as a second deed of trust on the property. So I didn't get my wholesale fee when we closed. But my wholesale fee was on the property that my buyer had to pay me back within 3 to 6 months, depending on the deal. And I'm gonna get paid at that point. Now, I just had one come in last week that was $125,000 that we lended on a property. Now, that wasn't money out of my pocket. That was money that was supposed to be a wholesale fee on a deal that we said, hey, Mr. Buyer, I will take this money, and instead of me taking it right now, I'll put it on the property, and then you can go ahead and use that as your capital. I'm not gonna take payments right now. Right now, I'm not gonna take any interest. Let me be honest, if it wasn't coronavirus, I would take interest on all that. But for me, it's either I make $125,000 at some point here, 3 months later, or I don't make it at all. That's where we were. So we've done that on a few deals as well. So you need to get creative on things that you're doing. Now, business finances, KPIs. KPIs are so important. So key performance indicators. This is something you need to be tracking in your business. Know your numbers, know your KPIs. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you need to know how much does it cost your company to get a deal, right? So how much marketing do you need to send out in order to lock up a contract, to get that contract in the door and close it? During the coronavirus, we did see that number spike because I was hesitant to lower my marketing. I was still sending about 60,000 a week, 60,000 pieces of mail a week. Plus we had pay-per-click, we had text messaging, we had all this stuff going. But I said, man, our pipeline is so full right now. As a business owner, you're not looking at right now, you're not looking at today, right? You're looking ahead a month, maybe even 2 months ahead. You're planning your marketing out. And I said, if I stop my marketing right now, then potentially I'm stalling my pipeline a month down the road or 2 months down the road. So any action I take now is gonna cause a problem a couple months later. So when you look at your cost per deal, that is a very important KPI. And as we were going through this coronavirus, I even spent more time looking at these numbers because I needed to make sure that my cost per deal wasn't just skyrocketing, right? If my cost per deal was $2,000 pre-coronavirus, did it just jump to $10,000 or $12,000 and I didn't even notice it, right? That's a dangerous number because you want to keep that number as low as possible. So when we started seeing contracts starting to fall apart, that's when I started shifting my marketing down a little bit. So I went from 60,000 down to about 40,000 pieces to see what that would do, because we realized our phone calls were few and far between as well, right? Well, we might get 300 to 400 calls in a week previously. Now we're looking at 250, 300 calls. And we started seeing that number shift down. And we're like, okay, phone calls are going down. It's time to lower the marketing a little bit. Let's see where this virus is going to take us. We had to really watch and not make sudden moves with things. But I'm going to talk about the power of a mastermind for a second. I'm not going to sell a mastermind because it's not what I'm doing, right? The mastermind I am in, we spend so much time as a group talking about, where we think the market's going to go. As coronavirus started, we met once a week over Zoom calls, just talked about what we saw in our markets. We're all spread out through the US. What we saw in our markets. And one of the guys I was talking to, Don Costa, he actually has a great mastermind. He runs a Flip Talk podcast. And he spent a lot of time on those calls because he's in the mastermind as well. And he would offer me advice from the Fresno area, and I'm here in Southern California. So our areas are so close that some of the things he was seeing happening or I was seeing happening, we could relate to it. Then I had Jason and TJ out in Birmingham, Alabama, right? I mean, far away, but these guys are starting to see things in their market that I already experienced a week or two ago. So I realized their market was behind what was happening in California by about 2 weeks. So I was able to help them avoid some of the issues. So when you look at a mastermind, you're in there with people that are like-minded individuals in a similar business. I don't care if they're fixing and flipping, if they're wholesalers, as long as they're in the real estate business and they're actively doing deals. Spending that time talking to people like this are going to help you avoid very costly mistakes. So as I started taking my marketing and lowering it down, some of these other guys did as well. They were following me, right? But I didn't know if I was right or not. I was just giving it a shot and seeing what happened. Some of them waited for the outcome. I reported back to them, hey, I lowered my marketing and this happened. Or I changed up my mail piece to see if I could potentially get a higher response rate. Some of these guys tested COVID mail pieces. By that, I mean they went to their mail house and said, hey, I want something that's specifically talking about the coronavirus and selling your house. And some of them tried pieces like that. The coronavirus caused a huge impact in a lot of businesses. And one thing I realized I saw from the coronavirus is a lot more coaches popped up in real estate, right? I noticed a lot of people that were big names in the past and they were claiming they were doing hundreds of deals. Where are they now? They're not here, right? But I also noticed a lot more sponsored ads for courses. And I look at that and I say, okay, these people probably saw such a big dip in their business. Now they're trying to make money by selling courses. So I didn't start doing that. For me, I said, I'm going to run my business and I'm going to keep my business going the way it needs to be. But a lot more coaches popped up. So some of those people are supplementing their downturn in their business by that coaching model. So make sure you do your research on anyone you're going to buy a course from. You make sure that you follow someone that actually knows what they're doing in the market. Now that we're starting to see this coronavirus taper off on our first round, and California just went back into a modified lockdown. We're not stuck in our homes, right? But he forced businesses to close and things like that. Restaurants, for some reason we can't eat inside, but we can all eat outside just 3 feet away from each other. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we got to run with it. Now, as they talk about a second wave coming up, I am marketing as much as I can right now. I have increased my marketing to build my pipeline up. So if in fact this happens again, then I'm going into this with even a bigger pipeline than I had now. But I'm also watching my close dates. Right now, I don't want 90-day closes because those are the ones that are most likely to fall apart because of the unknown. We're trying to get my team to do a 30 to 45-day close maximum. We prefer 14-day closes just because we know exactly where we're at. So watch your close dates. Make sure your close dates are as quick as you possibly can. And now I would even consider taking, a $40,000 wholesale fee instead of a $50,000 wholesale fee if it was guaranteed to close in 7 days, that I knew that money was going to come in. I'd rather have a guaranteed 40 in versus a potential 50 down the road. So make sure you're watching your close dates. Make sure you're watching how much you spend on marketing. And we put 35% of everything that comes in the door into our savings account within our business. Now, that will be used for bonuses and stuff like that as the quarter ends, but that money is sitting there right now in case we need to run our business. If I need to shift to pay my employees, that way I don't have to lay people off during this time, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that my employees don't have to worry about paying their mortgages or their rent. To me, that keeps my employees focused on what they need to do and keeps them invested. Now, as there was 3 of us in this office, me, Mike, and Nick were in here, let me just tell you how good our team is to us, right? There was a lot of stress during this time. I mean, my stress level, you say the maximum is here, I was probably here. So was Mike. We were working long hours because it was taking us 3 times the amount of work to get a deal closed as it would previously, but we were also short-staffed. So that created a big problem. Our team could not come to the office. The governor said, nope, they couldn't be here. We weren't even supposed to be here. But they would come to the door and they would leave gift baskets outside of that door, cookies in them, candy. Some of the guys brought lunch in for us, a couple bottles of vodka, things like that. But that just shows that I have the right team in place. I have a team that got me through this, and we had each other's backs the entire time. Now, that's more of a family than a team. Now, some of the other guys I know, they said, oh, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and use this time, get better talent. They axed some of their team, and I don't blame some of them. If you don't have the right people in place, I'm gonna say this really carefully because I'm not saying go fire your team. But if you feel that you don't have 100% the right person in the right seat, you know how many people do not have jobs right now? How many people are on unemployment? There is people that would not have lost their jobs if their company would not have shut down, right? So they didn't get fired. Their company could not physically work. So they're on unemployment. You can nab some really good talent right now if you get out there and start advertising that you're hiring. You're gonna get candidates right now probably better than you would have ever gotten in the past. These are people that would still have jobs if this virus didn't happen. But they're looking for a company that is more recession-proof, right? More virus-proof, because these people got laid off. Their lives have just been disrupted. Now, what's gonna happen, the people that don't want jobs and are fine with that extra $600 a week coming in right now, they're gonna milk that $600 a week for as long as they can, which means if you post a job out there right now, those people that just wanna milk the unemployment are not gonna apply. They're gonna frantically apply once that stimulus package is done. But the people that truly want to work are going to be applying for these jobs. So you have such a good opportunity. This might be the only good thing coming out of this virus is you have an opportunity to get people on your team that can take your business to 10 times the level it was before this all happened. We want to talk about positives and negatives. That is a great thing, right? I have a good team. I have the people in the right seats. So I'm not adding more people at this point, even though I should still be hiring. I should still be looking because you never know. The people that are going to be more devoted to your company are the people that are going to get nabbed up quick by other people. One other thing I looked at, as all this started, immediately I started looking at my profit and loss statement, right? I started looking at everything that I had on there, everything I was spending money on, and cutting everything I didn't need to. So we were looking at subscriptions. As you guys watch videos, people always say, subscribe to this, you need this, you gotta buy this. And the next thing you know, you've got $2,000, $3,000 a month in subscriptions, and you realize you've only logged into half of those to use them, maybe once or twice. So the first thing I did was go through and cancel everything that I was not using. And that should have been done previously. And I'm gonna watch that much closer going forward. But just because someone tells you to sign up for something doesn't mean you should go do it, right? So some of the tools that I kept that are really important, we kept Deal Machine. Deal Machine is one of those that we use on a daily basis. And as we got less responses on marketing, we started spending more time out there looking for properties and trying to get leads different ways, right? So that was very valuable to us. PropStream, that is one that we will not give up, right? That tool gives us everything we need to be able to talk to a seller. We sound so knowledgeable when we call a seller because we have that app. We log in there, it tells us potentially how much they owe, and the number's not always accurate, but it's close enough. And it gives us a quick summary. So this person thinks we spent hours looking at their house, trying to figure out how we wanted to talk to them, how we wanted to approach it, but that's not the case. PropStream told all of it to us, right? My system, that is one of the big ones. So we use realestateinvestor.com for our system. Used to be IPO, so Robert Seifert, good friend of mine, Gary Boomershine. Those guys started up that system a while back. I was actually one of their first customers on their new system. It does all the auto follow-up and everything like that. It's not a cheap system to have, and it's not something you need on day one, right? But it's something as you start getting enough leads in your system where you can't manually follow up with these people and it's time to start automating it, something like that is what you go to. So those are some of the things that I spent so much money on in the past, and I knew that I was utilizing those every single day. So those are stuff that I kept, right? I'm not gonna go through the stuff I canceled because that's not really as important, and I don't wanna talk bad about a software. Me canceling some of these things had nothing to do with the actual software itself. It just had to do with not using it. It just didn't fit into what I was doing every single day. So we got rid of some of that. We saved a ton of money on that. We started calling our company that does our marketing, my buddy Todd over at Yellow Letters HQ. I talked to him. I'm like, hey, dude, we need to get some cheaper postcards. He told me no, but I mean, it's still worth a shot to try to see how you can make your dollar go further, right? We use Lead Sherpa for all of our text messaging. Jason Nichols got that software and it is fantastic. And as we're using that, I mean, it's a pretty cheap lead source. So that's something we doubled down on during this time. We said, okay, we can send a postcard for 30 some cents, or we can go in there and use Lead Sherpa and potentially get a lead for a quarter of the cost of mail, right? So we doubled down on that stuff during that time. So make sure you're really looking at everything you're doing. Now, I'm gonna just tell you kind of how my mindset's changed going forward. So let's say there is no round 2 of this. And I pray to God there isn't. I don't wanna see anything else happen. But let's just say there isn't a round 2, we move on, stuff starts going back to normal, sports start again, we can go to a football game, we can go sit in the movies, we can do all this stuff, right? We can actually eat indoors at a restaurant again instead of in a parking lot. If that happens, I'm still gonna keep some of this mentality that I started during the coronavirus. I'm still gonna watch these numbers a little closer than I was. I'm gonna watch those subscriptions and make sure I'm not applying to things or starting things that I don't need to do. I need to keep myself more focused, and I did that during this time. I wanna make sure we're looking at every way possible to close a deal, and we're not letting money fall through the cracks, because that's gonna be so important. And we've lost a lot of money in the past because we have leaks in our systems, right? So you're always trying to plug those leaks and make your processes better. And you should never stop doing that. But you'll never truly stop the leaks. There'll be a lead that falls out because of the way your sales rep talked to them, or they just didn't jive with the seller. A buyer that falls out because he can't get financing. There's always going to be things that happen. But our goal is to try to stop those leaks as much as possible to keep the money just flowing in every single month. That's something we're gonna do going forward. We're gonna constantly be looking at every one of our processes and how we have them documented. Are our processes up to date? You know, we lost a key employee during this time. We had to put somebody else in that position. Well, luckily we had the processes documented, and we did not see even a 1-day downtime switching from the employee that had been with us a while to the newer person that we were putting in, because that person was ready to step into that role and run with it. And we had all the documentation, we had everything we needed to make that happen. So make sure your processes are documented. You may need to pick up a process that you haven't done in a while. I haven't got on the phone with sellers in a while. I'm running the business. I've got my sales team doing it. I talked to so many sellers during this time. I talked to so many buyers, so many lenders. I was back in the weeds again, and it actually was kind of fun because I actually kind of got that mentality back where I was ready just to pounce and start locking up some deals and have some fun. It's cool to see kind of being part of that team again versus overseeing that team. So definitely make sure you guys spend time in your business as well. Everyone says always focus on your business, not in your business. I think you should do a mix of both. That's important. So that's what I'm going to do going forward. That's some of the impact that I had from this coronavirus. Let's pray this doesn't happen again, that we can all move forward. But I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope this video helps you, and I hope it makes it so if anything like this ever happens again, you'll be prepared for this and you can come through this stronger in the end than you were in the beginning. So hopefully this helped you guys out. I'm Scott Oots. We'll talk to you guys later.